the Bible talked about the earth floating around in space. Did you know that? Yeah, it's in Job, right? So let's go there real quick. I'll show you that first one. Alright, so Job chapter 26, verse 7, if you didn't know that, the Bible talks about the earth being suspended on nothing. Alright, so we take it for granted because you've seen those pictures of outer space. It's just a blue globe floating around in space, right? But you gotta remember when Job wrote this, the Greeks and all these people, they believed that the earth was suspended on columns, and the Hindus, I think, believed that it was on the back of a turtle. And then they asked them, well, what's the turtle standing on? They said, well, on an elephant. But what's the elephant standing on? Well, on a monkey or something. They went through this whole thing. It was insane, you know? And Job says, no, God suspended the world on nothing. And so people then said, dude, you're crazy. Science doesn't show that. Well, guess what? It does now. So the Bible was right. Here's another thing that the Bible predicts. It's pretty interesting. It tells us that the earth is round, that it was a globe. And that also you can see right there in that verse, in Isaiah, it uses a word called the circle of the earth, right? But in the original, what was it, Hebrew or Aramaic, that word actually, depending on context, can mean an actual circle or a full globe or a sphere. All right? So this context tells us that the earth was round. This is at a time, again, when everyone thought if you sail too far, you'd fall off the edge of the earth. All right? God was telling his prophet, they're all wrong. I did that job. It's my design. It's round. Trust me. All right? So, again, when people say, you know, the Bible's full of scientific errors, I bet it's different. I said, no, in fact, the Bible predicted what science would discover thousands of years later. You see? Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's right or wrong, right? Just because you don't understand the concept of infinity doesn't mean infinity doesn't exist, right? And of course, I'm not talking about the car, right? I'm talking about the concept of something that never ends, right? All right, so here's another one that you might want to look at. It's interesting. The Bible tells us in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 33, verse 22, that the stars would be uncountable. Right? He was talking to Abraham, I believe, and he tells him, you know, I'm going to make your descendants as unnumerable or uncountable as the hosts of heaven or the stars of heaven. Now, something interesting there. Excuse me. You guys have to bear with me. I've been fighting a cough here. Somewhere around the year 120 BC, there was this guy named, I always mess up his name, so let me read it to you. He was an astronomer. His name was Geopardus. You can go look him up. And he disagreed with this statement in the Bible. He says, no, I don't think the stars are uncountable. I'm going to prove it. So he went out one night and he was laying there with a notebook and he started going 1, 2, 3, 4. And he did that a couple times and he actually counted the stars and he counted 1,022. So you can actually look that up. And he said, oh, you see, Jeremiah was wrong. The stars are countable. I counted them twice. There's 1,022. Right? So about 300 years later, this other astronomer named Ptolemy comes around, and he says, you know, I'm going to go check up on Geopardus' count. So he goes out with his little notebook at night, and he sits down, and he goes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, Geopardus got it wrong. There's not 1,022. There's actually 1,026. And so he was off by 4 stars. But still Ptolemy said, Jeremiah's wrong. I just counted them again. There's 1,026 stars. They are countable. So God was wrong. There's a scientific error in the Bible. Well, guess what? About, I think it was like 3,000 years later, 1,300 years later, 1,300 years later, this other guy you might have heard of come along. His name is Galileo, right? He invented the first crude basic telescope, and he looked up, and he almost passed out with what he saw. He went, wait a minute. There's actually stars beyond what we can see from Earth. You and I know that, right? Because we live in the 21st century. They didn't know that. So he picks up that telescope and goes, whoa, I can't count that many stars. And now we have the Hubble telescope, and they still can't count. That thing can look way into space still, and they still can't count all the stars. See? So guess what? The Bible was scientifically correct. The scientists were wrong. Amen? So like I said, you know, one of my favorite preachers, Adrian Rogers, says, if you give scientists enough time, maybe they'll catch up to the Bible someday. We'll see. Right? So whenever they say, oh, the Bible's wrong, no, you're just not advanced enough yet. Give yourself a couple hundred more years, maybe you'll catch up. Alright?